Didn't say. So, welcome everybody to another Fida talk. We're tonight joined by a great selection of artists. These were the commendation artists for Century of the Selfie. I don't know if anybody did Marshall McLuhan at university. So maybe some of you studied Marshall McLuhan, maybe on your foundation, but it was a big part of my world, and it's nice to wrap some of these projects into the wider discussion of fashion illustration and art. And the goal of what we do at Fida, and I know some of you call it Fida, Loewe, whatever, but for us it's Fida, and the goal for us is really to celebrate fashion illustration, fashion art, drawing, illustration as a practice as well, painting and digital arts, and being experimental and quite playful. So I guess that's our sort of role. And if you've been following us for however long we've been going, about 2019 now, just pre-COVID we started. So we've been going quite a while, and it's been very successful, and there's been some amazing work. And I know fashion illustration is a very tough market to survive in. But I know all creatives, as we know, are passionate about what we do, and money isn't the sole driver behind our artistic practice. So I'm just going to share on my screen the lovely work that was created. Let's just move this onto the main page. Okay, so Century of the Selfie was a kind of an idea about, we've done many projects about portraiture, about the face, and I thought currently the selfie was really important, and a really important place within art and art history. And I know drawing yourself is a very tough thing to do, and I've always found it hard for myself, but it's the most challenging. And looking back at artists like David Hockney, Lucian Freud, Paula Rego, there's been many artists who, not many illustrators, Sol Steinberg or someone like that has illustrated themselves, but not many illustrators draw themselves. Maybe they're not vain enough. But I think artists really they challenge themselves quite a lot. And it isn't about vanity, it's more about self-discovery. So I know some of you, it was quite funny to see some of the portraits that come in, because I know who some of you are, and I've seen your faces. So when I see the portraits coming in, I kind of recognize them. And it wasn't about them being photorealistic. So it could have been something more abstract, something more playful. And as you can see within the selection here, is a total array of different approaches to portraiture, self-portraiture, storytelling, and composition. So I guess when we're looking at the work and the judges are looking at the work, they're trying to look at all these little modes. They didn't know who you were. I did, and I didn't communicate that so much, but it was really about the idea of you looking at yourself and maybe coming up with an approach to drawing something, and maybe reinforcing it in your own practice. So I guess we could come to the first person, and is it Jouisanne? Can you tell me if I'm correct? You're on mute. Jouisanne, you're on mute.
There we go. Hi.
There we go.
Sorry. It's Jouisanne.
Jouisanne, okay. So what I'd like you to do is just quickly explain a little bit about your journey into fashion illustration, and then explain about the work that you submitted and sort of the process that you went through and the journey.
Yeah, of course. So I obviously, like everybody else, probably have always been into art and design specifically. So I went down the route of fashion. I studied fashion, went to the Royal College of Art. I specialize in knitwear, but I've always continued just drawing, illustrating, sketching, keeping a sketchbook. I can't not do it. I think all creatives probably share that. And yeah, since graduating from the RCA, I've done freelance work mainly. I currently work as a knitwear designer for a British brand called Jigsaw. And so fashion illustration and then actual sort of real life design sketches have always been quite closely connected for me. But then also producing work like, for instance, the entries for this competition, I think was a good chance to be really free and explore things, explore different styles. So yeah, it's really, really inspiring, especially seeing other people's work as well. There's so much great work out there. So yeah.
And you've also incorporated some typography in there.
Yes, in a way. I think, again, in terms of design, that's always a big point when doing things like portfolios, presentation, typography, fonts, handwriting, always really important. There are artists that incorporate it into their work as well, which I find really interesting. And then obviously looking at very iconic things like Warhol, how they use print comes into it. So yeah, it was just it was something a bit new for me. I hadn't done it before, but I thought, with regards to it being about a self-portrait, about the artist and looking at myself as an artist, which was very awkward, I thought it was apt to sort of give it that title.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed when I looked at your series of portraits, they all had attitude. So it was quite, there was some sort of attitude to it, which I thought, because I kind of met you before a little bit at the awards. I'd seen you, and it's quite amazing. You've got this sort of soft character, and then in the way the portrait was, the composition and the way that you shot the image had this very young, like the face, because I used to look at the face and kind of conquer this sort of, it's like a death stare, but it's a very sort of, there was a real attitude to it, which I thought was quite good to see. It reminds me of like early Nick Knight photography of punk. And I think that was quite an important outcome. Whether you meant that or not is a different thing. But what we saw was kind of was that visual. If I'm correct or wrong, I could be wrong.
Yeah, it is intentional in a way, because when I saw this sort of category of self-portraiture, I started thinking, oh, what should that be? It can't just be a random selfie. It's just a random picture of myself, of my face, seemed really dull. So I was reading up a lot about self-portraits in general, about female self-portraits, and asking myself what it really should be. And I kind of got this idea that it should be something quite defiant in a way, like you're sort of really examining yourself, almost staring. So I think that's where that kind of came from and shone through as well. And I did about 7 of them to try and sort of hone in on something. And by the end of it, I was royally sick of my own face.
I think that that's probably why Van Gogh chopped off his ear. Doing too many self-portraits.
Maybe, yeah.
I need to abstract this a bit and lose a bit of the head. So, okay, and I love this sort of combination of muddy sort of portrait colors. You know, I know you're a Lucian Freud fan, and that sort of muddy skin colors mixed with these really punchy fashion sort of garment colors. And I think the combination of the two really brings it down to earth and grounds it in a very sort of a great combination of art and fashion illustration, and it feels very contemporary in a good way. It doesn't feel, you know, if we look back at fashion illustrators and fashion illustration, you know, I've had feedback that what we're creating isn't fashion illustration, which is kind of good because I'm not too worried about that. So that's some of the feedback that I get from the old guard, as they would say. But we have to move forward, and I think fashion
Definitely.
illustration is a different practice now than just serving the fashion designer, is what it was before. So I think that the roles changed. So anyway, excellent. So thank you for that. And next, Helen McClafferty. I can see lots of faces, so hopefully you'll pop up on my screen. If you want to just do a little background explanation about yourself, and then kind of explain the piece that you've submitted.
Okay. Well, I'm trained in fashion design, so that's what I went to uni for. And since then I've worked as a fashion designer, graphic designer, product designer, just any kind of creative job, but I've always done fashion illustration on the side, which isn't really what I wanted to do. At uni, my lecturer used to always say, I can definitely see you doing fashion illustration, and I was like dead against it. But I think it was because all of the fashion illustration that I was showed at uni was quite dated and, like you say, just really focused on like the garment and like wishy-washy colours. They didn't really go into much detail. And then afterwards I started looking at people like Richard Kilroy, and I realised I could put in my love for like detail and portraiture, and my love for fashion design in general, like showing the construction and the fabrics and everything like that. So I sort of developed a more like detailed style, and it's evolved, and now I absolutely love it. So mine isn't a self-portrait. So when I saw the categories and I saw the selfie one, I was like, I'm definitely not doing that, because I mean, I don't take selfies at all. I have done one self-portrait, but it's literally, you can only see my hand, my hand's over my face. It's just not me at all. And then I think I saw something that was like, oh, it doesn't have to be yourself, it can be just a selfie. So this is of Danielle Markin, who I follow on TikTok, and on TikTok she's really polished, very enthusiastic about, well, she's a makeup artist, so she does like really creative looks, and it's always very happy-go-lucky. And then I saw on Instagram she posted this selfie where it was a bit more real, and the emotion of it, like the just sick of our life sort of vibe, really struck a chord with us, because I was just feeling like that. My studios were being demolished, and I was like, that is exactly how I feel. And I think because obviously it's a selfie, but she puts this like front on for the world on TikTok, and then this was more stripped back and a bit more relatable. It just really drew us in. And I love anything that's a bit like self-deprecating and, you know, a bit more realistic to the world, and not this overly positive vibe. So I just decided to draw it and had a bit of fun with it. So I always draw, well, I don't always, but most of the time I draw the head separately, so then I can like get all my like hyper detailed style out in the head and the face, and then I can be a bit more creative with the rest of it, so experiment with like different mediums and digital techniques. So I never really had a plan for how it was going to look like all together, but I just had this head, and then I drew so I always like draw the head separately, and then I wanted to do something really detailed, so, and like to show like the construction of the garment. So I decided on like a graphic nightwear, and a lot of my work's unfinished, but that because it shows how detailed it is, but then it fades into like being very sketchy, so you can see the process of it, like how I got it to that detailed stage. And then I always digitize everything, and I faff about with different techniques on Photoshop and Procreate. So I added the cream background just to soften it a bit, because it was quite harsh and very like monochromatic. And then I always add this circle on. I don't know why. I think it's because I was brought up Catholic, so I've got to canonize all my illustrations. But it does draw the attention back to the face, which is obviously where like the emotion comes from, and it's where all of the detail that I put into it is. So yeah, that's it.
Now it just shows you with a selfie, like, and that was one of the things I didn't want people to worry about. it could be something that represents the mood, the feeling. And if you hadn't explained, it's quite nice that, you're talking about Catholicism, you're talking about that sort of Catholic guilt, always
God.
haunted by this sort of the Eucharist and stuff like that. I'm a Catholic as well, so I know.
Yeah.
But it's
Catholic
that
guilt's real.
it's there, and I just, and your work has that very sort of young. It reminded me of Mae Muller or someone like that, and this young girl who easily ID magazine, them sort of spaces that there'll be very street music. I don't know who she is, but this TikToker. But just looking at it, this sort of like my kids would go, Dad, stop, would give me side eye and stuff like that. So I can relate to when I see pictures like this, it brings youth into the conversation really quick. And I think that's what makes it so relevant. And your approach to drawing is bringing in that sort of almost hyperrealism mixed with this sort of abstract play of bringing it in and showing it coming from nothing, almost growing like a tree into the space. And I think, I've seen quite a few of your work, so it's quite interesting to see what you do and your selection process of how you pick people, what they do, how they look, and it's really interesting to see how you've added that different garment on and drawn it in a different way, quite skeletal. It kind of almost brings in fine art, drawing the skeleton and stuff like that. So there's like I say, you don't realize from college your formative moments have so much influence over what you do, and then you're talking about fashion, and you're talking about the different way that the garments made, and that care and consideration does resonate through the work. And I think, we were talking to Leetle, who won, and she was talking about working with all these different people and changing her styles, and she just said, I had enough and I wanted to do something different. So she started cutting things up, and that's what came up with her approach. So I think, like with yours, is kind of a departure from what you do at work, and then you're kind of mixing all of these techniques together. So I think this is a real good sort of interplay of all these styles, techniques, going through Photoshop, and having this really hyper detailed drawing, the circle, all of them they're the layers. And I think fashion illustration didn't have as much of that in the past. It was more superficial, and it may have been more about like I had Culture Vulture, which was more about documentary. So I think from that side is really, you think about illustrators, Richard Haynes and people like that, who really capture the world that they see, where this was capturing like a portrait, like a photographer captures that moment and the person. And I think if you love portraits, it's an addiction. And if you could draw other things, but you always come back to the portrait. So yeah, a lovely piece, and it's nice to see the face to the work now. We've finally spotted each other.
I know, I'm trying to be like Banksy, but it's not working.
No. You can't be Banksy in the modern age. Or Dead Mouse or someone like that.
Yeah.
Big mouse on your head is possible.
If only.
But good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Super. Mariz or Marianne. You've got many names. You can turn your microphone on. Hello.
Hi. Well, my name is Mariana. I go by Mariz because everybody in my life calls me like that. I hope you can hear me properly.
We can hear you.
Yeah, perfect. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I grew up in Argentina. I studied a little bit of graphic design back there. And then 8 years ago, I moved here to London. I've always been into fashion illustration. I always had a love for fashion. And I think it's probably the thing that got me illustrating in the first place. But I never really saw or understood that there was like a career behind that, which is why I think most of my life I really just spend more time in fine art and, just making these more like acrylic or oil or water-based paintings that had more to do with fine art than fashion illustration. And then once I came to London, I kind of realized that this was a thing and that I loved it and it was a passion of mine and I should absolutely pursue it. And which is what I started doing in 2019. That's a little bit of a background on me.
And the artwork.
The artwork. This piece, I did it around the first lockdown. It's quite a large painting. It's about 1 meter by 60 centimeters. And it kind of came up as a act of self-observation during a time of isolation. I was alone for the first time in my life in London. Everybody had kind of left, gone back to their countries, and suddenly it was me and my reflection, and that was all the company that I was allowed. And I sort of became quite observant with it and decided to create this self-portrait by looking at myself in the mirror and painting next to it. And then I added what we call them medusas in Spanish. I'm not really sure the name of English. These creatures around me, these sea creatures, because I was always very inspired by them. They can survive incredible amounts of pressure and they have these very malleable bodies, these beautiful colors. I felt very inspired by them. I wanted to have them around me as sort of like a shape of perhaps an aspect of my soul. And I decided to represent a little bit my love for fashion in a few embroidered details that I myself embroider manually directly on the canvas. So the jewelry is all hand embroidery, and as well the shiny bits of these sea animals, it's also done by me manually. And when I saw that there was going to be, I have it hanging in my home, which is quite interesting. When everybody walks in, they instantly recognize that it's a self-portrait one. I don't have that many. I have only like a handful of them. And when I saw this selfie thing, I figured, I think this is actually the perfect thing. And it really matched, I think, the energy and the idea behind that particular category.
Good. And I've seen your work for quite a while, and I think it always plays on the edge of fine art, and I guess for me it's always nice to have someone who's pushing the boundaries of what is fashion illustration or fashion art, and we see this with the work that's probably shown on Show Studio, which is probably a bit more drawing, but mixed with pastels and things like that. So I feel that we maybe are blending a bit from fine art to fashion fine art, them sorts of spaces that we're talking about and trying to work out where we sit in the world within an artistic practice. Because I guess most people think about being a commercial illustrator where it doesn't always play out, because they may say, oh, my work's too artistic. And that's something that I've always had feedback for my work ever since I left university, is your work's too arty. So it's something that you have to kind of adapt to and work out whether you want to sell your soul to the devil of commercial world, or if you want to be a creative and sort of rebel back, but you may not get a job for Coca-Cola, which I guess is the difference. But no, this was a fantastic piece of work, and it's great to see you putting all of these details and the embroidery and the colors and the rich tones, and you always do really playful stuff. Whenever you enter work, it's very playful, and it always catches me off guard when I see it coming in, the work. So it's always interesting to see what you're putting forward, and you've been quite brave. So and I always commend that. and that's not me. I just hand the work to the judges and they select. So it isn't like a biased from me. It's really down to the judges to pick the work. So it's just nice to see what they pick as an outcome from the work. And because I see a lot of the journey, so I know a lot of the illustrators. I just haven't always seen your faces, like I haven't seen yours. So no, a great piece of work, and a lovely, and it's great to hear the backstory, and it's great that it's big. I guess some of the problems that we have with big work is when people photograph it, they photograph it really badly, and they don't think about cropping it, and they don't think about taking their shadow off of the photograph. So they're the sorts of things that we do get. So it's good to see a sort of professional outcome for photographing your work, and you know, it's represented in a really nice way. So you know, I'd love to see them in reality, I think is. And if you're in London, you know, hopefully we'll book out a location and have a big exhibition and plan. You know, they're my goals. It's just organizing exhibitions is, as we all know, is a painful painful and expensive system to have an exhibition. So it takes a lot of planning. So excellent. Thank you, Mariz. Brilliant. So next on my list, Emanuela, where are you on my page? Here we are. Hello.
Eccomi. Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm Emanuela. I'm Italian. Just to say something about myself. And I currently live in Belfast. I moved here 13 years ago. I studied art in Italy, and then I stopped for many years, and I studied archaeology and history of art. And then when I moved here to Belfast, I decided just to, I don't know, I felt that I want like to do art again. And so I'm mostly, about figure drawing and painting, portrait painting. And so when this year I seen like the category for the selfie, I was like, oh my God, that's like amazing. And I got into fashion illustration actually during the pandemic, because I started to do a lot of fashion drawing. And one day I was like, well, let's try this one about fashion illustration. Before I knew, of course, like what it was, but I seen like a lot of work that was maybe not in my course. But then I went like to this session, and I was like, oh my God, what's this? This is like crazy. This is incredible. It's colorful, and it's full of details and of energy. And so, yeah, that's how I started. And
your work and your piece that you submitted?
Okay, so the piece that I submitted, well, first thing I want to say, I had a lot of fun working on it, because of course, as you said, that kind of forced me to think about what I want to show of myself, who am I today? The last self-portrait that I did, I was probably in my 20s, so it was like a lot of time ago. And yeah, so it was I don't know, the process also of thinking about really of looking into myself and looking also into the world. And plus there is like this story that happened. So in January, well, I had like a bit of different things in my life lately, so I changed the house, and a lot of stuff changed in my life. And I had this photographer taking the portraits of me, and he was interested especially in the thing that I mostly dress in black, but my work is very colorful. And he was like, you don't even like have a self-portrait. And I wonder, I mean, he was curious about this thing. And so this made me think that maybe I had like to elaborate on this thing and to actually look at myself also, I don't know, from this kind of lens. And yeah, so it was like very fun, because actually I took the picture. I mean, I dressed up, I put up makeup and everything, and I was like feeling good. And yeah, then I took pictures and I worked from them. I worked actually digitally, because I work both digitally and in traditional media. I love gouache, for example. But since I moved out, I didn't have a space where to work. So I was like, oh my God, I need to find something, some media that is actually okay to work on even like in a small space. And so yeah, I worked digitally, but not as much. And I didn't think that this piece was like actually passing for the selection, because I was like, oh my god, it's very digital. And yeah.
But I think there's lots of people that submit work that is digital and has a background knowledge of image making for an analog process. So a lot of people sitting here in front of me, I know that their work is digital, and it has an approach that could be painting. It uses the knowledge of, if they were oil painting, like smearing stuff. So there's a real, I guess, a play between this sort of juxtaposition of mixing old-fashioned traditional knowledge with this new technology, and then disguising it. That was always my rule, was to disguise the digital, that it looked like it was handmade. And that's all to do with scanning and playing and constantly pushing the boundaries of technology and stripping back all the time, so it doesn't have these sort of like clip art look. As I always hated Illustrator, because it was vector bait. I used to call it vector vomit, but it felt vectorized. And I guess that was sort of my mindset, even though, you know, I do like minimalism and things like that. So I guess I was fighting all the time with technology. And I think that's what a lot of creatives do, is have this battle of, you know, when Procreate came out and everyone jumped on Procreate, everything started to look Procreate, but then the brushes started to get really interesting, and, you know, Procreate's really grown into something quite cool. But yeah, no, your piece was great. The composition was great. The color, the mix of the color and the sort of, as you said, dressing in black, I think was quite a nice touch. And it really kind of represents you, which was a great piece. And I think it's nice for us to see people using photography as well, and bringing photography into their work, maybe not drawing with mirrors, and styling it. I think that's what brought a bit of the fashion illustration in, is the styling. And you're Italian, so I know styling is so important in Italy. You know,
yeah.
I worked with Italians, so I know styling is at the forefront of what they do. So you can see that sort of styling undertone with the piece. So it was quite a clever move for you. So well done. And, you know, it was a great piece of work, and it was the first time I'd come across your work. So it was nice to see some fresh faces in here. A lot, you know, there's a lot of fresh faces in here. So some people I've seen, some people I haven't. So it's nice to have a sort of mix. So great, excellent.
Thank you.
Is Irina here? Hello, Irina. I saw you nod.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Irina Uva. I'm originally from Russia, but last year I'm traveling. So I'm now in Turkey, but also with many moves. So my background is in fashion business. So, and from office position where I was HR manager, helping to grow a big business. This is in Russia, top one high-end fashion group called Mercury. Maybe Emanuela knows this, because in Irina Center, first floor, they have, yes, super. So, and I was involved in all the processes, including interaction with brands. And I used to draw from the very childhood, but a bit not focused on fashion. But once I went deeply into the fashion business, my all works became fashion and lifestyle and aesthetics. So these are the topics I draw. So I worked in traditional media, but due to travels, I switched to, not completely, but I switched to digital. And only 1 year I work in Procreate. So I'm lucky that my style actually transformed to the digital. I didn't do anything. I just even didn't study the functions properly. I just began to draw as I do with the pencil, with the ink, and these are my favorite medium traditional ones. So, and actually, as for work, I submitted when I saw all the categories, I read the descriptions, and I opened Selfie category first, and one of the first idea was the images of models, fashion models, and I really love male portraits. So this is my work is inspired by David Chan. This is Asian roots, one of the top models in fashion. So I actually like the pose, and I think this is Selfie. So I thought it's perfect for the categories. Thank you for notice me and my work, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Good. And I think what's amazing about a lot of people is some people don't have, like Nadia Kulrista, who is one of the previous winners. She has no academic training. She did no previous training in art, and she won. And I don't know if anybody's seen her work. She's like a drafts person at the highest level of drawing. You know, a lot of people follow her for her skills of drawing, and it was just amazing to see how she illustrates and draws. And you know, she has no training in art, so it's good. It's funny because when we first started, we were asked, like, should we put questions down and information, and a lot of people used to write us letters and information about, I do this and I do that, and personally I don't really care what you do. I think the work is the work, and the work speaks for itself, so that people put in the work. Even if we didn't know what country you were from or anything, so there's no bias. We try to, so when they look at the work, they just get numbers. So they don't even know if you're a man or a woman, where you're from. So nobody has a clue. They just give us numbers back. So they can't research you neither. So we really have this sort of anonymous approach to it, because a lot of illustrators who do sometimes put in work, the illustrators will recognize their work. So we have to kind of work our way around that, because they'll know a lot more in the earlier days. But now we're getting a whole eclectic mix of drawing. So we try to keep it as anonymous as possible. And so it's great to hear people like you just, an experience in business and then going for it. And I think that's a fascinating story. And I think it's commendable that you have the sort of courage to go for it and get involved and be involved in the project. So, and a great piece, it was really sort of iconoclastic, which I really liked, really graphic, and I thought that approach to it, and I love the fact that you're talking about, you have this very almost brutalist way of using Procreate in a non-knowledgeable way. I think that's the best way. Like, it's like drawing with your bad hand. I think it's a good way to use the tools of Procreate, is to use them the wrong way, and then you'll get better outcomes and be quite playful with it. So excellent. Thank you, Irina. And thanks for being here, and good luck on all your journeys traveling around.
Thank you.
And Vanessa, is Vanessa here? She's like, well done, Vanessa.
Hi, hello.
Did you? I saw you logged in an hour early, so I don't know if you got the time wrong. But...
yeah, there was 7 p.m. in Belgium. It was 7 p.m. So this is 8 p.m. for me now.
Okay, well, we managed.
So
to
we are on a
anyway.
different time level.
No, good. So we were just saying earlier, what we'd like you to do is just explain a little bit about yourself, and then explain about the piece of work you entered, and then everyone can have a look at the piece, the painting piece.
Okay, so I am Vanessa from Belgium. As many of you, I have also a background in fashion design. I studied fashion design at the academy in Belgium here, and I worked for a long time as designer for several Belgian brands. Along that, I've always been drawing, also making illustrations for magazines. It was like a second love. And when I first started out, I also drew digitally for magazines. But then at some point, I got tired of it and I started painting traditionally again. So a few years I took up the painting, and I have never stopped since. So meanwhile, I don't work in fashion anymore. I only paint 8 hours or 10 hours a day. That's what I do all day now. So my style is not really really fashion illustration. It began there, but along the road I took a different path, and I really got into big paintings, also landscapes or houses or whatever comes to my mind. I actually chose the card of color, and I think you can see my fashion background in most of my painting because of the colors, or because of patterns of textile design I use. So that is how I came here now. So when I saw the Fida competition, I've already entered once before. So I chose the selfie category because sometimes I get, I know, not sometimes, I often get the remarks because my paintings are not selfies, not at all. They're like models from fashion magazines or whatever that I go paint in another context. But I do often get the remark that they have my features, like the dark hair or the eyebrows, or they look a little bit like me. So that's why I entered the selfie contest, because I get that remark a lot. So
good. And I guess I've seen your work many moons ago when you first entered, and then kind of coming back again to see your work again, and then I recently saw some houses that you were drawing, which was really interesting, and I know you have, you can, even though you've said they're not fashion, when I look at them, all I see is fashion. That's I can only see a fashion painting. You know, you've got this sort of very pastel pink and this sort of pale yellow, and then you've got this lovely sort of gradient vignette in the background with the trees. You know, there's Jill Button, and there's all these different illustrators that have done painting, and illustration has moved. Dries van Noorden's has sort of brought in a lot of painting. Erdem, Roxanda, yeah, they're really embracing the painters, and they embrace art and painting within their practice. So illustrators have to kind of shift a bit. So your work, when I see it, really, you know, I remember Prada using very similar to what you've done in garments. So you could imagine a brand like Prada using your work, and it would be phenomenal to see it on a skirt or on a jumper as a knitwear, and just done in this very high-end sort of approach to fashion. And I think that's like the next step. And I think it's a shame that a lot of fashion artists and illustrators, whenever I see a lot of fashion designers work and they're illustrators, and they never fuse them. And it's really weird to see how they abstract the painting. It's like, I love painting, and fashion's my work, but I don't want to put them together because I don't want to ruin my love for painting, because it will just get messed up with my work. So yeah, it would be great to see your stuff. You know, you can imagine on scarves. Yeah, there's so many different ways I could see this in fashion. And I think they've got a really nice approach to them, and they're quite, the characters have so much story to tell. You know, there's a real narrative there, and that's what fashion is. We had Poppy Wadilove giving a talk, or she taught one of our classes, and she was talking about She worked for Italia Vogue, and they were saying, we need more narrative in your fashion illustrations. They can't be just fashion drawings. We need environments, we need things happening. So they desire what you're doing, not just a little pretty picture. So the market is telling us certain things, is talking to us, but it all depends on the context of where the work's going. So, you know, these are great pieces, and I know they're quite big, aren't they? You do them quite big.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so they've become quite big pieces. Are they acrylic?
Acrylic paint, yes. Yeah, I think most of them are about 1.20 meters on 80. Sometimes I go bigger. So I have smaller also, but not, the portraits are always big. I don't know why. I think the landscapes are smaller, but the portraits are big.
Yeah, I always notice that, and it's they have a lot of detail in them, and I think that's where your fashion side comes in, is your care and consideration to the garment and looking at the details within the garment. So excellent, thank you, Vanessa, and luckily we managed to sneak you in and get you forward. We've got another 2 people online to talk, so I'm just gonna, before you all disappear, I know time's ticking. We've done well, 48 minutes, so we've really gone perfect to timing. We've got just 2 more people. I think if Menelie's here and Zoha is here, I think they're on. And this is an area that's been the toughest sector for us to tackle, because we have digital illustrators, we have a lot of fashion designers kind of talking to us. And I've tried to put this in the forefront many times, and it's a very difficult topic. And I don't know if Menelie's here. You hear Menelie? Or she's not?
Hello,
Yeah,
here.
you are here. I'm trying to, let me just change my my grid so I can see you. Let's see have you got your screen on, Menelie? Yes, there you are.
Yeah, can you see me?
I can see you now, loud and clear. So Menelie's piece is here, and she submitted a few pieces. So what I'd like to do, Menelie, because this might be quite a controversial discussion, and I'd like you to talk about it and explain you, and then explain the piece of work you submitted.
Yeah, okay. So hi everyone, my name is Melanie. I'm Thai. I'm a fashion design graduate student from LCF studying fashion for menswear. I also do fashion illustrations, and I love painting. And right now, currently, I have a collaboration project with a fashion brand based in Bali. It's called Propp. It's a luxury resort wear brand, where I had the opportunity to design the textile for the latest Aliens collection, where you guys can find it like in Bali if you ever go, or visit their website. Or if you want to see more of my work, you can also visit my Instagram. It's Melanie Gallery.
Yep.
So for this piece that I did, I entered the Fashion Future Awards. This art piece I used was like made by artificial intelligence, where I used a program called Midjourney. As you can see, let me share my screen to you to show you the prompts. Oh no, can I share it, or?
Let me just have a look. No, it's nice. Someone's really changing the script, but go on, Menelie.
Well, I have the prompts for the.
I think I've allowed you to share the screen.
Oh, okay. Can you see this? Oh, okay. All right. Let me show you now.
I'll stop sharing, and then.
Oh, can you guys see the screen? So these are the prompts that I use from Midjourney. So as you can see, it's quite packed and hectic. But in order to create like a look that you want to, you kind of have to be quite expressive with the way you describe your picture. So there's no limit into whatever you want to write. So like the more you write, you get the better results. So this image is actually a remake of my university project in my second year. So I was like describing all these description through the prompt. And also it's all about like kind of like trying and, you know, a few times until you get the perfect one, the picture that you like. So actually it's not like as hard as you think, and anyone could try this like tool. It's kind of like a tool that helps to recreate an art which is like in your head. Yeah, which I believe that sometimes it could be beneficial. And I just love trying something like new since I'm quite like an experimental person. So yeah, like during COVID, I was kind of like experimenting with this Mid-Journey program, and I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Perfect. Good.
Mhm.
1 second, I'm just going to stop sharing. If you stop sharing now, Melanie.
Okay, hang on. Yeah. Can you see me?
Yeah, I'm just going to pin me. There you go. I can see you. So I guess the nice controversial part was that you were using AI. And I know a lot of people have been talking about AI and the usage of AI. And one of the reasons this piece of work propped up is it isn't only about using AI. It's about you being the selector and the decision maker and the taste maker. So when people do AI is more about you telling the machine to make something and then you making a decision whether you like the work or not. And I think that's the big thing about AI at the moment, is it's really down to taste making. And a lot of the people here obviously are painters, artists, artisans, drawers, and they would feel a little bit either deflated or cheated by people using AI. But we're not here to, we're here to be controversial. And it's nice to see how you as artists could riff off images that are made in AI. So I can imagine, like Helen, you could put in the words that could go into it, and you could put in the name of the person, or you can feed in your own images and then recreate your own that comes through the AI that you use as your reference. So you're really building your own reference and your own sort of copyright, so that if you are to use it as reference, it's come from an AI generated image rather than an image direct from a magazine that could cause an issue, or from a Pinterest account or something like that. So for me, this is a really fascinating space, but I do know it annoys a lot of people, and but we're here to be controversial, so it's good for us to get work like this. And I know, Melanie, you asked me about it when entering, and you know, for me, I thought it was a sort of perfect segue to where we are today, and what could, if we had an AI competition or option, what would be the outcomes from this? So on a different spectrum, I guess we have Zoha. Are you here, Zoha?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Hi, guys.
Hello. So if you can explain about you and then explain your process, I'll just go back to sharing my screen so we can see.
Sure. So, hi, guys. My name is Zoha, and I'm from Pakistan. And I did not study fashion design. I'm actually a fashion marketer, and I study fashion marketing and merchandising. So I have a lot of a marketing geek inside of me. I have done graphic designing. I do content branding and social media. I also do animations. I'm also an environment artist where I make environment for games. So how the journey started was back in 2019 when I was in uni. And there was it was not a fashion illustration course, but it was a technical drawing kind of course that they taught us. And that's when I realized, okay, I think I really like fashion, and I think this is a new thing. So let me just try it out. I was really good at Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff. So I initially started using mixed medium, where I just grabbed a lot of pictures, a lot of references, and just just smash them all together. And that's how I got my first illustrations out. So that is how I started. And then slowly and gradually I shifted to digital drawing, where I made everything on my iPad or my note. And there was a point, I think it was a year and a half ago, where I was like, I don't think I'm that great at drawing, honestly. It would take me a lot of time to learn the basics and, you know, study the lighting, the characters and everything. So, and I was really, really enjoying my 3D digital fashion part, where I make the garments on clothes. I handle production and all of that. So I was like, how could I turn that into, you know, my real time, not just a hobby, but my career? And I was about to give up on fashion illustrations because honestly, I thought that 3D art is not fashion illustrations, but because I didn't see anybody do it. So I was really confused. So I consulted my friend and mentor, and he was like, no, this is fashion illustrations. As long as you can communicate fashion through it, or there's a feeling or a vibe to it, it is fashion illustrations. It's just how you sell yourself. I was like, that is completely right. How could I forget that, being a marketer myself? And then I was like, that is correct. So I started converting all those pieces to 3D, and I started doing that. I then became part of Digital Fashion Week, New York, then London. And then when I was doing animations for them, I realized that I really like it. When I make animations, I learned making beats. I learned a lot of stuff on the way. And this was the first time I applied to any sort of awards or something. I'm not that confident in, like, I like my work, but I'm not that confident in it. But I was like, okay, let me just try. Let me just give it a shot. And I got selected. It was quite exciting for me, and I'm really humbled to be part of this group. And so basically, when I made that piece was it was a year ago, and I was at a very low point in life. And whenever I make my pieces have a lot of story attached to it. Like every piece I post or make has a lot of thinking and research that goes to it. It might look simple, but it has a lot of storytelling attached to it. So for this piece, I wanted to show how women, they go through a lot of hurt and a lot of negative emotion, but despite all of the heartbreaks, all of the mistrust, all of the the sad parts of their life, they still pick themselves up, and they put on a lipstick, they put on a nice shirt, and they get back to life. So that was the message that I wanted to portray through that piece. So in that, you could see that there are a lot of hearts lined up behind the girl. So those hearts are all the hearts that she collected from all the heartbreaks, or all the the deceits or whatever, and they are all lined up behind her, and they touch the ceiling. So like they're kind of overflowing in a way, but still she stands on this concrete floor, and they're like flowers sprouting through it. So that's a surreal environment that I created, where you see that despite all of that, despite the thick skin that she has, there's still flowers going through it, and they're blooming. So she's still giving life and people and feelings a chance. So that is what I wanted to show through that.
Excellent. So, well, it's a lot more than I imagined.
Yeah.
It was a really great piece. And last time we did a digital fashion entry, we had people who were just starting to use Oculus, and we had one of the head designers of Oculus. He entered one of his collections of pieces. So we've had, it's still on the fringe of what's happening in digital fashion, but a lot of fashion companies are merging over to digital fashion. So those who are working in fashion probably know that there's sort of really this battle now between people using Clo or people using any 3D software, whether they're using Maya or Marvelous Designer or whatever is out there at the moment. But it's nice for us to embrace the digital world, because I've worked a lot in it, and I've done a lot of stuff with virtual reality, so I have a good understanding for it. And it's just good to see here two images, one made by machine and one made by human, and I thought that was a really nice combination of the two, and to see where sort of digital fashion where you're coming from, and it isn't always just all digital. Because I think when it's in the digital world, it's full of like maybe geeks and people that are all becoming digital spaces, and it becomes steampunk. And so it's nice for us to see people that are making art and image making to then what you're making, and you're considering the same sort of narratives as the people that are drawing. So it's good to see that combination. So anyway, excellent. You know, I did want to keep it as short as possible, so we've managed to stick to an hour, which is amazing. And you know, for all the work that we've seen tonight, hopefully, you know, you've all had a little bit of time each. You know, and it would be great to have a big conversation of what we all think about all these different things. But that's usually for our crits. So we have crits. I don't know if anyone's come to the crits, but we do a London Fashion Week crit, and sometimes they get a bit heated, where we have industry feedback and see what the artists have to say. So that's where we usually get critical feedback. But here we're here to embrace the great work that's been submitted. So thank you, everybody. And, you know, I know a lot of you might have got here last minute, but we've managed to make it happen. And it's great to see your faces, you know, for once, rather than just your drawings. So I've got a lot of faces now that I can connect to whenever I see you online, and I'll know who you are through your face as well. So, and thank you, and have a great night, and hopefully see more great work. So good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Bye-bye, bye-bye.